Welcome to episode 61.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
Finally, warmer weather is here, and there is no better time than right now to book your vacation getaway with 3D Travel Company. Head on over to our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co and click the Book Now button on the left-hand side. They give a complimentary quote so you can get an idea of what it will cost to take your summer vacation. For a limited time, Who Did That Voice listeners can receive a Disney gift card for qualifying Disney and Universal trips, booked and traveled by the end of 2017. Hurry and book today so you can travel away.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hey you guys, this is a special shout out to all my listeners around the world. Who Did That Voice is now heard in over 78 different countries, and I can't thank you guys enough. Here in the USA and abroad, thank you for listening to Who Did That Voice. Keep listening and sharing with your friends. Hey all you Marvel and Spider-Man fans out there, Who Did That Voice is doing an entire month with cast and crew from the 1994 Spider-Man the Animated Series, which aired on Fox Kids. You won't want to miss the month of June on Who Did That Voice. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today is part 2 with John Semper. Today's special guest was the writer, story editor, and producer on the 1994 Spider-Man the Animated Series, which aired on Fox Kids. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I know your time is very precious. I just wanted to go over a couple things with you, or for the listeners. You've been able to work on amazing shows besides Spider-Man, like Static Shock, The Jetsons, Scooby-Doo, DuckTales. You've mentioned JJ the Jet Plane, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Extreme Ghostbusters, The Incredible Hulk, the animated show, the animated Fraggle Rock, Super Friends, Kiki's Delivery Service, just to name a few of the amazing projects you've been a part of and an influence on. And in fact, with Kiki's Delivery Service, I believe you actually wrote the American script for that movie when it was done here in the U.S. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started with a very pidgin English translation script, and then there was also Carl Machek's translation script, which was good for its day, but it lacked nuance. And also, one of my concerns was I didn't want to do the standard thing of the character's lips flap and then the words don't match the lip flap. So that always drove me crazy, And there was one line in Laputa that Machek had written. It was something like, "Why are you holding that gun that you are looking at me so fiercely and holding?" I mean, it was that kind of thing. Yeah. So the challenge was to make it very colloquial and to make it look like it was animated in English. And I think we accomplished that. I had loved Miyazaki for many years. I used to go get the laser discs, the all Japanese laser discs. So we'd watch these things. We had no idea what was going on, but they were just so beautiful. So getting to do 2 of his films was really kind of cool.
Absolutely. I have 3 quick things, John, and I'll let you go. The one is, Nick Fury, the helicarrier is crashing to the ground, and he says, regarding Electro, he says he brought down S.H.I.E.L.D. with only a gesture, heaven help us all. And that to me was just epic. Like those words ring in my ears, and I'm thinking, this is so cool. I'm like, I've seen these Avenger movies that have come out, and I'm like, they fought a lot of villains, and not one villain has just been able to, blow all the helicarriers out of the sky like that. And I'm going, dude, I think this animated series, they could learn a lot from that in the feature films they're making, because like Electro was awesome. And the World War II tie-in for me has always been a huge aspect. So Captain America, Red Skull, and then Electro being Red Skull's son. I just love the way it all tied in, and all these retro heroes from back in the day, and some of the voice actors that portrayed the 6 Forgotten Warriors were some of the most iconic from original Spider-Man series and other Marvel projects and DC projects in the day, like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and such. But Real quick, what kind of advice would you have to someone who might consider getting into this crazy business of being a writer or a producer or getting into the kind of work that you do, John?
Before I get to that, let me go back a bit because you mentioned the bringing down of the shield. I
Yeah.
actually remember when we were in the writers' room and we were beating out that particular story, and we had suddenly gone up against a wall, and I turned to the writers and I said, well, let's just bring down the helicarrier. And I remember Jim Krieg was in the room, and he went, "Oh my God, I never would have thought of that." And I thought that was pretty funny that we had those moments where you suddenly realized you could do these things, and it was really kind of exciting. That was one of the few scripts that I didn't normally beat out stories in a room full of writers. I can't think of anything more annoying, quite frankly. But that was one where we actually did like a traditional writer's room, and everybody got together and we all just kind of worked on it, and it worked out really well. You mentioned earlier the Spider-Man and his robot.
Yeah.
There were two episodes, and in one episode, somebody made mention of the Spider-Man having a robot, and that alluded to the Japanese Spider-Man series, which I had seen one or two episodes of.
Okay.
And he had a giant robot. And somebody said that as a joke. Somebody said, "Wouldn't it be cool if the rich Spider-Man had a giant robot? Let's just throw that in." And then they went off and wrote that script. And then when it came time to do the sequel, I thought, or the second part, I thought, well, let's just show the giant robot. And I remember that the writers who had worked on the first part, when we screened many months later, because there's like a 6, 7, 8 month gap between writing something and actually seeing it on screen.
Oh, wow.
And it's a long time. And so I invited them all over. When we watched those final episodes, they were all over at my house. And on came the robot. And I remember that the writers who had worked on the first part, they weren't aware of the fact that we had actually animated the robot.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And they were like, "Oh my God, there's the robot. We didn't know you had done it," And I loved moments like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to your other question about what advice I would give to writers, I don't know that I can really give advice to writers anymore because it's such a strange industry now. I don't know. It's hard for me to even know where the industry is anymore. Right now I'm freelancing on a show that's going to end up on Netflix.
Okay.
Called Robozuna, which means nothing now, but a year from now when it's on the air, then you might remember.
Yeah.
So I'm working on my second script for them right now. I don't know. I could say all the usual things like, come out here with grit and determination and do your job and blah, blah, blah. But it's just a crazy industry now. There's so much going on, and at the same time, it's hard to know where the core of the industry is. And so obviously, if you get to write a Star Wars movie or something, or if you're on staff over at Disney working on one of the series, then obviously you've accomplished something. But back when I was writing, if you were working at Hanna-Barbera, then you had made it.
Yeah.
If you were working at Marvel Productions, which formerly had been DePatie Freeling, but it became Marvel Productions, then you were on staff in a company that made a bunch of shows. Marvel Productions made all the Hasbro stuff. So you had an office, you sat there, you came in, it was 9 to 5, you did your job. Now people might work on a show and then they're off the show and they might not work again. Or the show, it might be on Netflix. I don't know who's going to see it. Maybe a lot of people will see it. Maybe not. Has a single animated show on a streaming service really clicked big time with the American public? I mean, has there been on an Amazon or a Netflix, has there been a SpongeBob SquarePants?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't either. I mean,
that's a good question.
So I don't know where the industry is anymore, and therefore I can't advise what you should do. If you really burn with a passion to write, then come out here and write and try to make a buck. I've never written a spec anything. From the day I first started writing until now, I've always been paid. So I consider that my mark of success is that I've been able to support myself quite well being a writer. But I don't know if that option is available anymore,
Yeah. Yeah.
because everything's so fragmented and so crazy. And I wonder where the future SpongeBob SquarePantses are going to come from, because I don't know that a lot of those series that are being made right now are going to gain any traction. I have no idea.
Well, it totally makes sense. The industry has changed a lot, and now we get shows that come out and they release every episode on day one on Netflix or Hulu, and you binge watch it and you're done in 10 minutes, or whatever. And it's just
Right.
it's a different world. It's not like, hey, I have to wait every week to see an episode, or I have to wait a year for the next set or whatever. So I can understand where you're coming from with your perspective of it's kind of hard to know where the industry is for somebody new coming into it.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you sharing that. Real quickly, I wasn't going to touch on this, but you did mention Cyborg with the DC Comics, and you are writing the new Cyborg comics, which is super fantastic. I know
Thank
for you, that has to be amazing to be a part of another wonderful franchise that you grew up loving, DC Comics, and to be a part of that, writing Cyborg Victor Vic Stone, which he's a super cool character, and I think he's really come into his own in the years since his creation. And for you to be able to be a part of that, I know that you're breathing life into this character that's going to have long-lasting effects.
Well, yeah, thank you. And thanks for mentioning it. Cyborg is being a lot of fun. I did start out originally reading DC Comics, so during all of my childhood up until I became a teenager, it was all DC.
Yeah.
And Cyborg is a fun character to be writing right now, because he's about to be in the big Justice League movie, which I'm sure they're hoping is going to be a blockbuster.
Absolutely.
So I'm once again handling a very important property. I've been so lucky in my life, because I have not labored in obscurity. I have always worked with major properties. I've worked for really major guys like Jim Henson and George Lucas and Stan Lee. It's fun to be at the forefront. It's I went through a long period where I really wasn't doing anything because I didn't want to. I kind of burned out.
Yeah.
And you'd walk the floors of the San Diego Comic-Con and you'd think, my God, there's so much stuff being generated right now.
Yeah.
How can any of this stand out? And now once again, I'm handling a character that is a standout character because of A, it being DC, and then B, this giant movie that's coming out. So I'm in the room with all the guys that are the real movers and shakers of this of the zeitgeist right now. And
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I've been here before. I don't know how many more times I'll get to be here again, but I'm here again right now, and I'm very thankful. It's fun to be at the forefront of all of this craziness.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much for diving into that a little bit. It's super amazing that you've been a part of it, and I just wanted to touch on it. Regarding Spider-Man, I wish the show had in some ways kind of continued, because it is so amazing. The animation's amazing. The futuristic weapons they use, the blasters and everything. I wish some of the movies would kind of learn from what you did and kind of take that on, that we like what we saw and we want more of it. But it was.
You know what? I have to jump in and say one thing, because you mentioned the blasters.
Yeah.
And I do this in every interview I give. We did not have so much censorship on Spider-Man the Animated Series. There's a myth that has cropped up around the series, and I'm probably the one that started it, because I used to go to conventions back in the early days, back before the internet. I would go to conventions, and for comedy relief, I would read some of the broadcast standards and practices notes that we would get. And then I gave an interview many years ago where I said, we get all these funny broadcast standards and practices notes, and somehow that translated into, we were the only cartoon show getting broadcast standards and practices notes, and we were the only cartoon show being told what we could and couldn't do. And so now, the kind of one of the voodoo myths about Spider-Man the Animated Series is we had all this censorship, and oh my God, we used laser rifles and we didn't use real guns and blah, 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 blah. Well, the reality is laser rifles are cooler than real guns. And we did do an episode that had a real gun, which was the one where Robbie Robertson's son, Randy, got a hold of a real gun.
His service gun, service weapon.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
people say, well, no one ever died on your show. Well, no one died in any Saturday morning show.
Yeah.
There was no blood. Well, there's no blood in any Saturday morning show. Did you ever see Wolverine actually hurt anybody with his claws
No.
in all those episodes of the X-Men? And then they frequently point to Batman, and there was a bunch of stuff that Batman did in the first season before the censors kind of came down on that series. But it's a different show. The guns were still very stylized, even though they looked like guns, and it was a different. It had a film noir kind of thing. We did not have so much censorship on Spider-Man. It's a myth. I hate it. I fight it every time I do an interview, and so thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring it up once again.
Well, you're welcome. I didn't think it was for censorship. I just thought y'all were going for a different futuristic kind of approach.
Yeah.
That was my perspective of it, because it was just super unique. And the blasters were just like so ahead of their time in some regards, I think, kind of Star Wars-ish,
of course. Of course.
So.
I mean, nobody goes to George Lucas and says, you should have used real swords. Why didn't you use real swords?
Yeah.
Gee, you had so much censorship on Star Wars. No, the reality is we were looking for something that would be interesting. One of the raps that the show gets from the so much censorship crowd is, well, you didn't have Spider-Man socking people in the face a lot. He didn't hit people. Well, that's me. I didn't believe that conflict resolution should be demonstrated to young children in the form of people hitting other people in the face.
Yeah. Yeah.
He had webbing. He had all kinds of interesting things that he could do. Why would I resort to him smacking somebody in the face?
Absolutely. Well, John,
so that's, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was going to say, so that's the whole deal on that. And I always do that when I give these interviews, because I hope that these interviews will hopefully live on a bit, and people will get the word. So thank you.
Hey, you're very welcome, John. The last question I have for you, and I will let you go, is what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Well, I never really thought about it that much until recently, and I suppose that's the normal course of events when you start to get a bit older. I don't know. It's a good question. I guess I'm very proud of the animated series. It has lasted far longer than I would have imagined that it should have. It's not shot in high def, and it's not shot in the aspect ratio of things today. So it comes on. It looks like it was shot during a different era, and yet still people are watching it. So I'm very excited about that. Most of my career, I've just taken it day to day, and I've enjoyed working with people that inspired me. So that's part of it. I guess just to be remembered for having done some really cool stuff that affected people like yourself. When you talk about a moment in Spider-Man that I remember thinking up.
Yeah.
And I think, and this happens a lot, because I'll usually, when I go to conventions, I'll meet up with guys roughly your age who grew up on the series, and they remember all the little details. To me, it's just like yesterday, a lot of the stuff I put in.
Yeah.
So when you talk about bringing down S.H.I.E.L.D., for instance, I remember thinking that up in the room, and I remember a lot of these little things. And at that time, we didn't have the internet. So you'd put stuff out there, and you didn't know whether anyone got it or not. I was not well liked by my bosses, because I was constantly fighting for little moments like that they just didn't understand. They didn't get why those things were important.
Yeah.
They had a different show in mind that's maybe a little closer to the kind of goofy show for young kids that they're doing with Spider-Man now. And an argument can be made that, that kind of show works for very young kids. But I didn't want to let the fans down. And so I was always pushing to do things a certain way, and they were always pushing back. And I would sometimes I'd just do them. They'd say, "Don't do that," and I'd say, "Okay, I won't." And then I'd do it. And then they'd come back and they'd be real angry with me, and "You'll never work in this town again," and that's cool. What matters to me now is when I run into guys your age and they say, "Oh my God, when you did that thing, and I'll never forget it. When you killed the water-based Mary Jane, That was one of the most dramatic moments I've ever seen on television. Those kinds of things are very rewarding.
Yeah.
So I like to think that my legacy is that those moments will continue shocking people and surprising them and delighting them. And then somewhere down the line, they'll say, well, who is behind all that? And then my name will crop up somewhere in there. And that'll, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely, John. Well, thank you so very much for your valuable time today. I really appreciate you coming on the show and speaking with me about some of the amazing things you've worked on, but especially Spider-Man.
Well, thank you, Trent, for having me on. And this was really a lot of fun. And now I have to go write. This is for future reference. For historians. I'm currently writing issue 12, I think, of Cyborg, and I'm so far behind, it's ridiculous. So I'm going to dash off. And I'm going to try to get this script in today so that it'll... So in the future, when collectors are trying to figure out why this issue made no sense whatsoever, it's because I was horribly late and I just got it in as quickly as possible.
Oh, well, John, thanks so much. Would you just give us a closeout today?
Hey, this has been John Semper on Who Did That Voice, and you'll never guess who's doing my voice. It's me. Holy moly. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you have enjoyed the show, and hopefully we'll meet up again soon.
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode with John Semper, the writer, story editor, and producer from the 1994 Spider-Man the Animated Series. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. I would love to hear from you. A question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the Episodes tab and listen away. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us this Friday for our next special guest, Sarah Ballantyne, the voice of Mary Jane Watson from the 1994 Spider-Man the Animated Series. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they've voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.